I'm your host, Dawn Fiske. Welcome to Life Coaching on the Move. I'm thrilled that you're here today because we are in for a real treat. I have got a guest on today's podcast. My guest is Australian author and speaker, Peter Symons, who is the author of Brainfuel, Depletion, Making Sense of Anxiety and Depression. He's got a great style about him. He's got a phenomenal backstory, and he's got some really practical advice and tips and strategies for us. Not only that, he is also giving away his book for free. You can, on the podcast, I give you the links, download his free ebook, which is full of practical tips and strategies that he learnt from experts that he's put all together in order for any one of us to benefit from and to help us make sense of our own anxiety, our own depression. So listen out if you have a pen ready, or if you don't quite catch it or you're driving or something like that, you can always email me through the website. So have a look at www.milestone-coaching.co.uk, where you can drop me an email and I will email you the links. Also on the website now, I have officially put up a separate page that you can click onto where you can purchase 2 reduced price life coaching sessions, a voucher for them for either yourself as a treat for yourself or for a loved one for Christmas. You need to, on the page there, you make contact with me and I send you the voucher and payment details, etc. So you can't do it electronically on the website, but you email it through to me. I'm not going to talk any more about any of that on the website because I want to get cracking with today's episode. Just a couple of points. There is a bit of a delay at the beginning, so bear with, and then we get straight into it. And at the end, as you know, I don't edit these. It's very raw. And for the first time ever, the telephone somehow my mobile kicked in onto the laptop. Even though I'd moved the mobile into a separate part of the house, it started ringing and then transferred to ringing on the laptop. So there is some interference right at the end, but you don't miss any content. We were literally wrapping up and saying goodbye. So sorry about the interruption. If you're new to this podcast, then please do feel free to go to the back catalogue of all the previous 76 or so episodes. If you want to start anywhere, the best place to start is episodes 1 to 10. They give you the whole foundation of how to overcome low confidence, how to build your confidence, how to achieve goals, change your mindset, become resilient, etc. And all the other episodes fall out of those first 10. So they're the best place to start. But anyway, I'm not going to talk any further. I'm going to go straight into talking with Peter Symons. I really hope you find it useful and interesting. Hi, Peter. It's Dawn. Welcome to Life Coaching on the Move podcast. I'll just introduce you. I want to introduce to all my listeners a guest this week. I am so excited about this. We've got Peter Symons here with us today, who is an author, Australian author of a book, Brain Depletion. And you're here today, Peter, to talk all about anxiety and depression, which I think are hugely topical at the moment, and a little bit about your own experience with mental health. So welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Dawn. I'm pleased to be on here, and thanks for giving me the opportunity.
Very welcome. I'm excited about today's subject because it is quite a story that you've got to tell. So Peter, tell us all about your book and your experience and how you got where you are today.
Well, I wrote a book about mental health, and the reason is, like a lot of people get involved, is I had a personal experience. So I was going along okay. I'm a veterinarian, and things were going quite well. I did have some health problems. I've had 3 brain hemorrhages, and the 3rd brain hemorrhage was when I was 43 actually. And but I realised when I went to hospital that I was mildly depressed, a bit of anxiety, a little bit of insomnia, but I didn't really know what was wrong. I just thought it's the fact that I had a young family at that time. So I went to hospital, had the brain surgery and the anaesthesia and everything else, but they woke me every hour for 5 days to check my observations. And I left hospital after the third brain hemorrhage, and I'd recovered well before, but I was physically quite well from a brain hemorrhage, but psychologically not so good. And I gradually got worse and worse. Anxiety, shocking anxiety, inappropriate anxiety, and insomnia were the two things. And that went on for months and months. So 6 months I put up with that. The last 2 months I was suicidal. I was sleeping about 2 hours a night, and I was the 22 hours I was awake, I was quite tense and highly emotional. But the good thing was it forced me to address what was going on. And I eventually found out I was depressed, even though I never suffered, I never felt sad, I never had depression. But I was told I was depressed. I said, well, I said I wasn't. And when they said depression doesn't work that way, you don't have to be sad, I said, well, that's a stupid name for a condition that I'm being suicidal over. And then I gradually worked at trying to find a simple explanation, which we do with all the veterinary diseases we've got to deal with, to try and work out what actually happened to me and how I could get better, and then how I could stay better.
Wow. So are you physically well at the moment? I mean, 3 brain hemorrhages is a hell of a thing to go through, Peter, just by itself.
Yeah, well, people die on their first brain hemorrhage, but I was lucky. Instead of having a rupture, I had aneurysms. I had a leak instead of a rupture, so I recovered. And then I had another one because they couldn't fix me the first time, so I was doomed to have another one. And then after they did brain surgery the second time, I had a third one, another aneurysm developed. But I got out of them physically fairly well. I can't smell, but everything else works, and I was pretty lucky with that. But the mental health problem that developed after the third was far worse than anything as far as the physical side of having brain hemorrhages, because I understood the brain hemorrhage. What I didn't understand was the mental health problem and why I felt so bad, why I'd gotten bad and why I felt so bad. So it was much tougher. And it's a very common condition. There's millions around in Australia, certainly, but around the world that have this condition, and particularly in the corona age with all the uncertainty and difficulties that offers.
Okay, so can I just ask a question, if this is okay? Between the first and the second, did you know that the second was inevitable? You implied there that it was almost inevitable because they hadn't properly solved it the first time around. Were you aware of that?
Yes. I was at high school when I had the first one. When I went to veterinary school after that and I learnt about the anatomy of the brain, I said, well, blood still flows through the particular area where the aneurysms are.
Yeah.
I said, I'm going to have another one. But I was young and optimistic. I didn't worry about it.
Right.
But it was 10 years later, the next one happened. And yeah, okay. But at that time, surgery, a medical science had caught up and I could have surgery and they could clip the aneurysms. And then I thought, well, now I'm immune. I can go back to the things I really wanted to do.
Mm-hmm. But then you had a third, did you?
Yeah, I had a third one. I had a separate aneurysm pop up in another place, and I thought I must have weak coronary arteries or something, but it popped up. This time I knew what I needed. I went to hospital. It was all very rapid,
Right.
but the difference with this one, the reason I didn't recover well from this one, because the second time I went to hospital when I was 28, my brain fuels were good. I didn't have any underlying mental health problem. The third time I was mildly depressed, and that became much worse as a result of the sort of rapid fire treatment I got in hospital. Then I had the depression experience itself. But it was a salvation because I'd been mildly depressed before. Once I found out what was wrong, I could get myself not back to where I'd been before, but back to being 100% normal. And so it was a tragedy, but it was a great salvation in the end. And it's
Really?
resulted in me talking to you today, Dawn.
Well, that's a great way of seeing it because, gosh, as an outsider looking in, I think it sounds like you've had one huge roller coaster, physically and mentally. What do you think? Because some people, I can relate to a certain extent to what you're saying, because I was myself very sick for a while and wasn't expected to survive. And I don't know about you, but once I did survive, at first I felt like I'd won the lottery. At first, I appreciated absolutely everything, small things, tiny things. then I went downhill mentally and got very anxious about would it come back. Is that what was at the root of your anxiety? What did you uncover as the root of your depression? How did you emotionally cope with that?
Well, the medical problems, people said to me, "Oh, Peter, you're very unlucky." I said, no, no, no. Bad luck is dying.
Yeah.
Good luck is where you get a problem, but you actually live and you can address it. So, and I was fairly optimistic, because I was fairly young, so I managed with that. But as I say, the anxiety, that was the real problem, because it was a condition that came on me and I couldn't work it out simply. I didn't understand it. That's when it became dangerous. Um, and I think the thing was, the one thing I never ever concluded, which would have been dangerous if I had it, I said, well, I feel like I've got a mental health problem because of the surgery. And if I'd convinced myself that it was permanent, then I probably would have said, look, I'm not prepared to live like this. There was no joy in the way I was living, with the anxiety and the insomnia, a highly emotional insomniac. I might have done something, but I didn't conclude that, which I'm glad I didn't. And then I met the right people who could guide me back on track. And in the end, I said, well, that's just been a blessing. A blessing because now I feel better, but also a blessing because now I can, if people ask me, I tell them and I can help them. Somebody, comes along and says, well, thank you, Peter, you helped me. So that's, great joy.
Yeah, yeah. Sometimes these things they don't just make us stronger. Actually, it can have a ripple effect because others can benefit as a result, can't they? And I've watched your presentations on YouTube. You're a great speaker, inspirational speaker. Tell me then, who did you meet? Who helped you and how did they help you?
Well, the reason I went to my doctor, because I didn't consider I had a medical issue, I had a mental issue. So I didn't go to my doctor, but I got a rash. I got so run down, I got a rash. And my family doctor said, look, you've got depression. I said, no, I haven't, because I said, I'm never sad, but he explained it doesn't work that way. So then I started to develop an idea and I said, well, I'm going to call this LSD, low serotonin disease, low brainfuel disease, or low neurotransmitter disease. I asked a few people, they all hated the name. But then I met Clyde Jameau, who's my co-author, and Clyde, who's a doctor, a very smart GP, was calling it brain fuel depletion, which is neurotransmitter depletion. The neurotransmitters are the chemicals that take the message from one neuron to the next. There's about 100 billion neurons, so they've got a lot of work to do, neurotransmitters. But he had the name, and also I asked him about all my symptoms and all the other things you hear about. Clyde had an answer to everything. I said, this is the model, this is the explanation people need, so they can work out what's wrong with them, and then by understanding the problem, they can work out the solutions for them. So Clyde doesn't write. I didn't, but I did because of that. And that's how I get the message out. And really, we do one thing. We have a simple explanation, which is in chapter 3, which is free from our website. And it's to explain that so people can know what's wrong with them, know what and why something's gone wrong with them.
Okay, well, I'm definitely going to have a look at that. Absolute certain. In fact, I might do it when we finish this call now. But what were you say you went to the doctor and he said you've got depression? You said no, I'm not, because I'm not sad. What were you? If you weren't sad, what were you feeling?
Well, my symptoms were insomnia and anxiety, and never any sadness. And I said, well, he said, this condition, the name is depression, but it explains a lot of different symptoms. I said, well, it's a stupid name because it's named after a symptoms, depression or sadness, that I didn't have. I had other symptoms which are included in that condition, but sadness wasn't one of them. So I said, that's why the name is no good. But I think most people, 50% of people, I think, that are diagnosed with depression have anxiety. And as I explain in the model, your brain fuels deplete, your neurotransmitters deplete, adrenaline kicks in to keep the body running. That's the two pillars of the model. And adrenaline is a powerful hormone, so it has powerful symptoms. Insomnia, anxiety, it's a fight or flight hormone, so people become angry and frustrated. And also if it's the flight component kicks in, they become remote and withdrawn. So I think adrenaline explains most of the symptoms you actually get with this condition.
Yeah.
Sadness, as I said, wasn't one of the ones that I had. Some people have it, some don't. I think anxiety is the more common symptom.
Yeah. And how did your anxiety manifest itself? Because I know with working with clients one-to-one, they can't, people's experience of anxiety can all be very personal, very different. I know what my symptoms were and my experience was of it, and I've talked on the podcast about this previously, but what were your experiences of anxiety?
Well, I call it inappropriate anxiety. And it's things that you can do, you can do, and all of a sudden you get enormous anxiety. So I would walk into a race meeting, because I work at race meetings, but I'd go to a race meeting, and I'd been doing it at that stage for 13 years. I said, there's nothing on this racetrack that I can't deal with. The anxiety would start to well up. I remember one day a horse broke a leg and I had to euthanize it. I had to shoot it.
Yeah.
And as I went to get all the gun out, something that I'd done and I know I could do, I had a panic attack.
Really? So you were experiencing panic attacks as well, were you?
I got to the stage where I could have a panic attack. I said, I can't do this, but I said, nobody else can. So I put this horse down. I shot it, as we do, because it had the irreparably broken leg. I spoke to the owner, but I came back and I said, well, I got through that. But I said, I can't cope with things I know I can cope with. That's when you start to get a bit dangerous.
Yeah.
So I would get from anxiety into panic occasionally. Public speaking was a problem, but doing something like that, like euthanizing a horse, was when I could kick into panic mode. And I just had no idea how to avoid it, to stop it coming. And then I started to feel a bit incapable about things that I know I can do. And that becomes a bit dangerous when you get a little bit down on yourself. As I say, the other thing, not sleeping means you're exhausted.
Yeah.
And that was just going to bed at night, sleeping for 2 hours and being awake all night was another dispiriting thing. So they were my two major symptoms. They seem to be pretty universal. I had the odd phobia, but there's other things that people get, but they were my symptoms. Yeah. And I get the fact you can have physical symptoms too. I didn't have many, but I really understand now that we know the brain's affected and the brain controls the body, why people get physical symptoms. And often they don't get diagnosed as an underlying brain issue and not an underlying neurological issue.
And what commonly are those symptoms, just in case a listener is experiencing those? What would we be looking for?
The two pillars are brain fuel depletion. So your neurotransmitters deplete, and that'll cause a set of physical symptoms. The adrenaline kicks in. Mm-hmm. So if we look at the depleted brain fuels, the brain controls the gut, and the gut kicks in and starts to digest food when you're at rest. But if the brain fuels aren't there, you can get something called irritable bowel syndrome.
Oh, yeah.
And so the gut, instead of working normally, it can actually be a bit over vigorous when it should be quiet, and vice versa. You can get all the way from constipation through to diarrhea. You can get gut movements in night when you should be at rest. There's a range of different things, flatulence and all sorts of burping, that sort of thing, because the gut is not in sync because of the lack of brain fuels. Physically, you can get palpitations of the heart because you've got high adrenaline levels. You can have trouble with breathing because the receptors in the brain that control your oxygen and carbon dioxide levels is a little bit out. You might take an extra breath, or there might be a few different things there that work that way because the receptors aren't coordinated as they should be. Mm-hmm. Some people's the muscles that the neurotransmitters control the larynx, so their voice might change very slightly. Lots of different things. There's reflexes, the gag reflex. Some people brush their teeth and it irritates the gag reflex because that reflex is just a little out of sync. Lots of subtle physical signs that often don't get diagnosed, but it's because the brain fuels are down. As I say, two pillars, brain fuels are down, that controls lots of involuntary functions in the body, and adrenaline's up. So anything that adrenaline affects, like the heart, particularly in palpitations, are affected as well.
Okay. God, you've just painted the whole picture of when my anxiety and panic attacks were really bad after my health scare. That's exactly, laying awake at night is the worst, isn't it? Because you feel everybody else in the world is asleep and you're the only one awake. And B, my brain used to take me to some really dark places, and that would then trigger all of this. I would think my heart was racing. Was I having a heart attack? I would think I can't swallow. I can't, what's happening? I guess that was the muscles and the reflexes that you're describing, and IBS classically, all of that I totally relate to. So how?
Very, very common symptoms. Lying awake and the rumination. You haven't
Yeah.
got enough brain fuel to say, well, I've dealt with that problem. Let's move on. You
Mm.
keep overthinking things, and that's you're awake at night. You're busy. Your brain's busy. You're exhausted. You're desperate for sleep, and sleep's the cure. And this condition stops you getting the cure.
Yeah, exactly. Because you can't fall into a nice, peaceful, restful sleep when your adrenaline's pumping and you're ready
No,
to fight or run. Really,
it's the most potent performance enhancing hormone on the earth. I know because I work in horse racing.
Yeah.
But you're desperate for sleep. You're exhausted, and it prevents that. It's a really cruel symptom to have.
It really is. I feel for absolutely anybody and everybody that's suffering with this, because it is really miserable. So what caused it for you, Peter? I think my health scare caused mine because I was now terrified of it coming back, or terrified of the children getting poorly, or my husband, or anybody actually. I related it all to health scares because I now had faced my own mortality. What was that the same cause for you, or other causes for you?
Not really, but you raise a great point. I mean, the point about identifying the problem and then taking treatment, medication, or doing all the different things to raise your brain fuel is when you feel better, you then need to go back and say, why did I get sick? What was the cause of the problem? You don't take a medication or whatever to continue the same stupid lifestyle. You need to look at the issues that caused the problem. For me, I said, I'm trying to do too much. I've always been a doer. That's my personality type. Then I got married and I tried to be a good husband. I don't think I went that well at that, but I tried to be a good father to 2 daughters, and I think I was okay at that. But it tipped me over the edge. It got me, just was a bit too much for me because I'm a doer. We say other people that are prone to this condition are other big brain fuel users or high achievers. They're carers, they're perfectionists, elite performers, and creative people. They're inclined to get this. Veterinarians have 4 times the national suicide rate in Australia because they're doers. They've got to get the job done. They're carers because they care about animals, and they're often perfectionists. And then if you're doing that 40 hours a week, that's something. But if you're doing it 50, 60, 70 hours with out of hours, they run out of their brain fuels, and their suicide rate reflects the fact that they're trying to do a bit too much. So you had the particular health scare issues that worried you. I realised I'm trying to do too much, so I didn't get a lot of psychiatric treatment. I said, I'm just going to do less. Instead of 8 things, I'm going to do 3. Other people, like, for example, a girl who's molested, say, by a father when she's young and can't establish relationships with men because there's a lack of trust. Now, if that's the issue, that might not be easy to unwind with a psychiatrist, but it has to be addressed.
Right.
So you need to find out what the issues are, go back, deal with them as best you can so you don't go down the exact same pathway that you've been.
You raise a really interesting point, and I've said this myself. I've concluded it myself that actually you're right. I think the health scare brought it to the fore for me, but taking it a step back, I think I'm exactly the same kind of character as you. I'm a do. My husband, he's often telling me off. Why don't you just sit down and relax? I can't very easily sit down and relax. I'm just like you. I'm constantly on the go from the moment I get up in the morning. And before my health scare, I was 2 young children, running my own business, running the home. I was a carer for my dad who had dementia. I'd lost my mum, etc., etc. And all of this had been building, I think, which I think is why I became ill. I think so. You're right. So taking it back, you're saying that it's overwork and overstress that causes this. Do you think all of this anxiety and this depression and the brain fuel depletion? It's stress. Then is that the root of everything?
Yep. You've got a million reasons there why you would become brainfuel depleted, Dawn. All those things, caring for people, husband plus father plus this, that, and the other, trying to do everything. Everybody aspires high, and I most of my friends are big brainfuel users that inspire me. But I've got to be careful that I don't try to do too much because I'm surrounded by people like that. So you've got many reasons. The reason you deplete your brain fuels is stress, and it might be one or many. Now, let's say for somebody, public speaking might be a massive stress. For the next person, it's not a stress.
Yeah.
But it's the particular stresses that affect you. Now, I talk about big brain fuel users, people trying to do too much, but we had a famous politician here who was involved in mental health. He said, this is the most democratic disease of them all. Everybody can get it. Nobody's immune. So there's all sorts of things. It might be poverty when you're being brought up. It's a child born into a family with, let's say the mother's single, and let's say she's got a drug problem, she's involved in prostitution, and it's a chaotic household. Well, there's another reason. It can be, you don't feel good enough. I've got to prove myself. All sorts of family issues that happen. So if it's a stress for you and there's one or many, then you go down this way, well, only you know what those issues are. Only you can backtrack. And some of them are quite individual. But your case, Dawn, you're on a podcast because you're a carer. So you've identified yourself as a doer. I know you're a carer because we're talking now. I know you've had plenty of things. If you're a carer, you're going to care for your father, you're going to care for your kids. And so you've got many reasons why you could have a bit of an incident. And I had. As I said, most of my friends have had this condition, and that's because they are big brain fuel users. They're inspiring people. I love to be around them, but they've got to be careful. I think that in this world, we just need to be aware of this and say, when do I need to take the step back? And your husband's telling you, Dawn, so
Yes.
I'm not there, but maybe he's right.
Yeah, maybe. Damn, he's always right. So, and I know that lots of people listen to this, and lots of my clients that I work one-to-one with are struggling with similar things, not necessarily the same stresses, but stress. And I know that we're in the human race is in an epidemic at the moment, or a pandemic perhaps, of stress. I mean, so many of my clients are stressed. They're trying to juggle homes, jobs, children, high pressure, deadlines, money worries, particularly at the moment with COVID and lots of redundancies and things like that. So what then would you say? What do we all need to do? What can we do to avoid this?
Well, people ask me, I say, okay, here's the 3 shields I've got, but the 3 things you need to avoid this condition. So I say, first of all, you need hope and knowledge. So I say, well, I've written a book. I think that's knowledge about what's actually happened to you. And when I speak to people, I try to give them the idea that there's hope, that I've had it and I've got better. So a simple explanation about what happens, because you cannot be confused at a fundamental physical medical level. You can't be confused about what's happened to you. So if you understand the problem, you can find the solution. If you accept our model that your brain fuels are now depleted from stress, the next level is to get your brain fuels up. So the way is to get your brain fuel up, and if you're motivated like I was, you'll do anything. But Steve Alardi wrote the book. It's got the 6 non-drug strategies to fix your mental health. So I said, he's written a better book than the back half of my book. And the Steve Alardi's The Depression Cures of Beauty. So sleep, light, exercise, activity, connection, and diet, and beautifully explained by him. You might also, like me, need some medication. I was doing lots of things right, but medication helped me turn the corner. 11 days after starting on Arapax 20 milligrams, I slept for 4 hours. And I hadn't slept for 4 hours solid for 6 months. I said, I'm home. And it took me a long time, but gradually I got back. So I felt better through a range of medication, but also my lifestyle change. But then I got to the 3rd shield. What was my issue? My issue was trying to do too much. I'm now ruthless at controlling that. For other people, the issues are different, but that's the 3rd stage. Don't take medication or whatever to continue the same stupid lifestyle that got you sick. So they're the 3 stages. There's a huge amount of money spent on mental health. I'm in one area, just the model, the explanation. And the reason I went to trouble, because the corona age came with all the uncertainty that involved, but also in Australia, I said, well, the suicide rate's gone up. That this country, like the UK, spent billions of dollars trying to improve the outcomes, and it's got worse.
Yeah.
So I said, I think the simple explanation needs to be advertised more than put out, and hence I'm doing some podcasts, and you've been kind enough to have me on your show.
Well, what I also love about you coming on here on the podcast is, I don't mean this to sound bad, but you're male and you're talking about your feelings. And I know with my client base that actually, rightly or wrongly, males still struggle a little bit to talk about how they're feeling or come forward for some help. Not all, we're getting better at it, but I do talks, mental health talks, and particularly in the construction industry, it's 2 suicides a day in the UK in the construction industry at the moment, because it's predominantly male environment. They're predominantly very stiff upper lip and big macho and man up and all of that, and they don't talk about their feelings. They can be quite isolated in their role if they're on a forklift all day or something by themselves, and it's great that you're here talking about this. And admitting how you feel. I relate to how you feel, but I think women still at the moment are a little bit better at talking about their feelings. So I'm so grateful that you've said all of this, and that you're acknowledging that we've got to, as a human race, do something about this, because any death through suicide is a tragedy, and it could have been avoided if we just helped and supported those people, or they'd come forward and talked about how they were feeling and addressed it. So tell everybody again, Peter, if you wouldn't mind, where they can read your pillars and your advice, and where can they find all of this, or where can they find your talks as well?
Well, I said in the corona age and things, I said, we think this is a good model. I said, we're going to give it all away. Clyde, the co-author with the model, he doesn't care about money. So we said, everything's free. So if people look on YouTube, I've got a 3-minute video to introduce people. If that attracts them, then there's a 31-minute video that's got a bit more detail with the symptoms I had. If people go to the brainfuel.depletion.org website, you can download the first 3 chapters of the book. They're free. The 3rd chapter has the model. So those 3 things, 2 videos to introduce you to it, and also the first 3 chapters of the book are all free for people, hopefully, because it might help. You're right about men. We're hopeless. I mean, the UK men are no different to Australian men. They have a lot of trouble, and they're in a group, sometimes in workplaces, and they say, well, have a drink, drink more of this or whatever it might be. I was fortunate with my problem that I'm used to going to doctors because I've had medical problems. I'm well connected, and I'm not scared to ask. But even then, I was reluctant and hesitant. I'd hate to be on a mine site, a fly-in, fly-out work that we have a lot of in Western Australia, trying to work out my problem with other men that aren't happy to talk about it. And because I don't think, I'm reasonably certain it would have been a much worse outcome. But men are hopeless. They're getting better, but they certainly have issues that need to be dealt with. And that's our aim, give them a simple mechanism they can get, because when you've got this condition, you're not in good shape. You can't deal with complexity. And hopefully, if I set an example, they can say, well, he seems to be going right. Maybe there's a way back.
Yeah, there is hope. You can come out the other side of this. And in a similar way that you said at the beginning, that being ill is not unlucky, when you survive, dying is unlucky, and that you did survive, you got better, and now as a result so many people are benefiting from what you've learnt. And I think I hope with me going through what I went through, and then the anxiety and the struggles thereafter, I think it makes you far more open and empathetic to other people's struggles. So in a way, I think it's made me more compassionate. It's made me a better coach. So it wasn't fruitless and wasted. I think it was a gift indirectly, although it was hideous. It was a gift because I hope other people can be helped like you through anybody's experiences. They can share it, and others can benefit as a result. And I think then it wasn't a waste. It wasn't all negative. So
it's very common. A health crisis makes people completely reevaluate. And to the benefit of themselves, but also the people around them. So it's well, if you have a health crisis, you've got to deal with it. But for me, I think it helped me and allowed me to evolve and read different things. And it certainly sounds the same with you, Dawn. So,
Yeah.
and that's probably why your experience and mine is why we're talking now, and hopefully helping some people that are listening to this.
I hope so. So let me just confirm for the listener then. It's Peter Symons. Now that's Symons. Is that right?
Yes,
Yep.
that's right. And brain-fuel depletion is on YouTube. There's a channel with 2 videos, and brainfuel depletion with no hyphen.org is the website where the chapters are available. The aim is to help people. As I say, nearly everything except a hardback copy that cost me $11 to print. Everything else is free. And people, if it helps them, well, spread it further. That's the aim of the model.
Yeah, I'll just repeat those again because I have a horrible feeling I said a sound or something over you then, and people may not have heard that properly. That was my fault, I think. So it was brain-depletion is on YouTube.
Now, brain-fuel depletion.
Okay, is on YouTube.
There's a channel, yep, and it's got 2 videos on it.
Okay, and the book where they can download the book with the 3 chapters is brain-depletion, is that right?
No, that's just brainfueldepletion.org. So, yep, the first 3 chapters are free there.
Okay, brain-fueldepletion.org. I'm going to go and do that right now, Peter. Thank you so much. I've really enjoyed talking to you, and I'm really glad that you're feeling really well. You've come out the other side both physically and mentally, and I really, really hope that it helps other people listening. And I just want to thank you so much for giving us your time today and for giving these chapters all free, and your talks are free. I think you're doing an amazing job. Hats off to you, I think. Well done.
No, I don't want people to go through what I went through. It was terrible, and if we can avoid that through what you and I are doing, Dawn, that's fabulous, because it was just a horrific experience.
Exactly, and we are going through a health crisis as a world at the moment, so this is probably perfect timing for anybody struggling. Oh, sorry, but thank you very much. Let me just decline that. I can't believe that. Thank you, Peter, for everything you've done today, and good luck with your book, and good luck with all your talks, and take care of yourself. Thank you.
Thanks, Dawn.
Take care. Bye now.
Bye.